Welcome back to the deep dive. We are continuing our journey through what is essentially the operational manual for patent law, the MPEP.
The Manual of Patent Examining Procedure, for sure.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're turning to Chapter 2300, which covers these really specialized internal trials. Our focus today is on one section in particular, MPP Section 2310, all about derivation proceedings.
And this section is, well, it's absolutely crucial. It deals directly with the fallout from one of the most foundational shifts in U.S. patent law, the American Invents Act, or AIA.
Right.
Our job today is to kind of break down the legal foundation, the very high bar for evidence, and the whole procedural structure of these proceedings. And these are all run by the Patent Trial and Appeal Board of the PTAB.
That context is everything, really. I mean, before the AIA, which is, what, about a decade ago now?
Just about.
The U.S. had a first-to-invent system, so disputes over who invented something first were handled by something called an interference proceeding.
That's right. And interference was all about chronology. Who could prove they came up with the idea and, build a prototype first, regardless of who filed first. It was complex and expensive.
So the AIA comes along and flips everything to a first-inventor-to-file system.
Right, and that old interference mechanism was basically replaced. So derivation proceedings are the new backstop, and they apply only to applications that fall under the AIA's first-to-file rules.
Okay, so the AIA says, simply put, the first person to file a valid application gets priority. But what happens if that first filer didn't actually invent the thing?
What if they stole it?
Exactly. What if they just took the idea and made a run for the USPTO?
That is the precise scenario MPE Section 2310 is designed to address. It's there to maintain the integrity of inventorship in this new system.
So the central question is?
The core question is this. Did an inventor named in an earlier application get the invention from an inventor in a later application? And this is a really critical part, was that earlier application filed without authorization. You have to prove both of those things.
Okay, so proving theft and proving the filing was unauthorized. That sounds like a huge burden of proof, especially when the whole point of the AIA is to reward the person who files first.
It is a massive burden, and it has to be. I mean, you're essentially asking the PTA to override the foundational principle of the entire first-to-file system. The legal authority for this comes straight from 35 U.S.C. Section 135.
Wait, I have to ask. Under this first-to-file rule, couldn't this whole process just become an avenue for, frustrated inventors who are just too slow?
For sore losers, basically.
Yeah. How does the PTA filter out the claims that aren't legitimate?
That's a great point, and it's exactly why the standard to even get a proceeding started is so incredibly high. MPP Section 2310 demands that the petition has to set forth, and this is the key phrase, with particularity, the factual basis for the challenge.
So with particularity means you can't just have a hunch.
Not at all. You need forensic detail. You need evidence.
Let's unpack those two elements you mentioned, because I think they could be easily confused. How do derivation and without authorization work as two separate hurdles you have to clear?
Okay, so derivation is the factual part of it. It means showing that the earlier filer, the person you're challenging, actually got the specific invention directly from you, the petitioner.
You're proving the idea was stolen. So evidence like emails, meeting notes, maybe a shared prototype, that all goes toward proving derivation.
Exactly. But that on its own isn't enough, because just sharing information isn't illegal. You then have to prove the second element, that the application was filed without authorization.
And that's the legal misconduct part.
That's the legal misconduct. This isn't just a breach of confidence. It means the filing itself is fraudulent or a clear breach of some kind of duty that amounted to, outright theft of the right to apply for the patent.
Okay, so let me see if I have this right. If I share an idea with a business partner and we agree they'll file the patent, but they only list themselves, that's derivation, but maybe the filing wasn't without authorization, depending on our agreement.
It's murky, right?
But if I share a full blueprint under a strict NDA with a competitor and they immediately go file it as their own, that's probably both.
That second scenario is precisely the kind of egregious behavior a derivation proceeding is meant to correct.
Yeah.
That combination, proving both the factual theft and the legal misconduct, is why most of these petitions actually fail. It's pretty rare to get one instituted.
Which really shows how seriously the USPTO takes that first-to-file date.
It does.
But let's say a petitioner does it. They somehow meet that incredibly high standard. The director of the USPTO then authorizes the board to start a trial. What happens then?
Once it's instituted, the PTAB gets a lot of authority. They basically act as judge and jury. They evaluate all the evidence, and if they agree that derivation happened, they can take corrective measures.
And the main outcome would be correcting the inventorship.
That's the critical one. They can correct the naming of the inventor on the application to preserve the integrity of who really invented it.
Now, since the PT is acting like an internal court here, I'm guessing they need very clear rules and language.
Mhm.
I see MPEP Section 2310 also brings in a bunch of standardized definitions.
Absolutely. You need that. You need standardized terminology for a complex trial mechanism like this. So MPEP Section 2310 pulls in a lot of definitions from another regulation, 37 CFR Section 42.2.
And that ensures consistency.
It ensures consistency. So whether you're in a derivation proceeding or some other kind of review, the words mean the same thing.
Let's talk about one of those key terms, party. Usually that just means the two people in a lawsuit. How is it defined here?
It refers to the petitioner and the patent owner, but there's a key expansion for derivation proceedings. The definition specifically says a party may also include any assignees of the applications involved.
Oh, that's a huge detail. So if the inventor who stole the idea then sold the rights to a big corporation.
That corporation is now a party to the dispute. They're on the hook.
So the original inventors might not even be in the fight anymore. It could just be two big companies battling it out over who really owns the rights.
Potentially, yes. The PTA recognizes that patent rights are assets that get bought and sold. So if an unauthorized filing happened and the rights were assigned, the assignee is the one whose property is on the line. It ensures all the real stakeholders are at the table.
And just for clarity, what's a trial in this specific world?
A trial here is the formal term for a contested case that the PTA institutes based on a petition. And the rules explicitly include derivation proceedings as a type of trial, putting them on the same level of seriousness as other major procedures like post-grant reviews.
Let's try to anchor this with a hypothetical just to see how this high burden of proof would actually play out.
Please do. It helps make it concrete.
Okay, we've got inventor A. She develops a fantastic, really novel circuit board design. She meets with inventor B, a potential manufacturing partner. She shares all the confidential schematics, the whole design, but it's all under a very strict signed non-disclosure agreement, a solid NDA.
Okay, the NDA, that's a crucial piece of paper.
Totally. Then, just days later, inventor B files a patent application first, claiming that same circuit board design as his own.
A classic breach of confidence. Inventor B now have that valuable first filing date.
So inventor A files her own application, but she's late. She immediately petitions the USPTO, arguing that inventor B derived the work from her and filed without authorization because of the NDA breach. How does the PTAB look at her claim?
Well, the PTB assesses that petition against that very high standard. Inventor A needs to bring the receipts. She'd need strong evidence, like the signed NDA, logs of their meetings, emails showing she disclosed the schematics, all of that to prove derivation.
And the without authorization part, the NDA is the key there, isn't it?
The NDA is very strong evidence, yes. It demonstrates that when B filed, he knew he didn't have the legal right to claim that information as his property. So he was acting without A's authorization. If the board agrees, then overriding the first-to-file date is justified.
And what would the corrective measure be? Do they just toss out B's application?
Not necessarily. The goal is to correct inventorship. If the board finds for A, they can actually amend B's application to name inventor A as the rightful inventor.
Oh, interesting. So they preserve the early filing date from B's application.
But they attribute the invention correctly to A. It preserves the integrity of A's rights.
When you look at it all together, MPEP Section 2310 really is the critical safety valve for the whole AIA system.
It is. It's the procedural cornerstone for fairness. It codifies the rules, what evidence you need, the standard terminology, the exact mechanism to make sure that while we're encouraging people to file fast, we still have a tool to prevent outright theft and fraud.
That was a crucial deep dive. It really clarifies the standards the PTAB uses to handle these derivation disputes and ultimately to preserve the integrity of patent rights under the AIA.
And before we wrap up, we really do need to extend a special thank you to Mike Shepard, the creative director who organized this entire audio series. He's made all this vital information so much more accessible.
Absolutely. And just our quick mandatory disclaimer, this summary of the MPEP was generated using AI tools, including ChatGPT and NotebookLM, and it may contain errors or omissions. It's for general educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice. For authoritative guidance, you should always consult the official MPEP, a qualified instructor, or a registered patent practitioner.
Now, for our final thought for you to explore, we talked about how these proceedings demand proof of both derivation and that the filing was without authorization. So think about this. What happens if an inventor discloses their idea without a formal NDA? In a situation where there's no written contract, what kind of overwhelming circumstantial evidence would a petitioner need to present to the PTAB to successfully prove that the earlier filing was truly without authorization and meet that incredibly high bar to take away their priority date?
A real-world challenge that just shows how complex patent law really is. Thanks for tuning in to the deep dive.